Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Port Phillip City Council. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the Yalukit Willam clan of the Boonwurrung. We pay our respects to their elders, both past and present. We acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to this land. So while councillors are meeting tonight at the St Kilda Town Hall, officers and members of the community will be participating via the WebEx platform. This meeting is being streamed via Council's webcast page and Facebook Live. Whilst we have planned for an online meeting, of course, there always remains the risk of technical issues arising beyond our control. So if we do experience any technical difficulties, we will adjourn the meeting for a short time to resolve the issue. Now, our meeting procedures and processes have been altered via resolution of Council to hear all submissions from members of the public at the start of the meeting. And as you may notice, all councillors are wearing masks when not speaking, in line with the regulations outlined by the state government, which states all Victorians must wear a fitted face mask when they leave home. So councillors are expected to abide by the law and wear a face mask when they enter the chamber, and the only exception is when they are addressing the meeting, in line with the broadcast rules of the regulations. Swap with you, Peter? Oh no, it's back on. All right, technical issue number 1 down. Once councillors have completed their contribution, they must refit their face mask. So first item on the agenda are apologies. Councillors, do we have any apologies? I can see by counting 9 of us, we don't. Next is the minutes of the previous meetings. So councillors, the minutes of the meetings of the 21st of October. I may have a slight issue. Yeah, I'll keep going while we try and figure it out. So we've had the minutes of the meeting of the 21st of October and the special meeting of the 11th of November, both from 2020, that have been circulated. Are there any questions regarding these minutes, councillors? No? If not, can I have a motion to confirm these minutes? Councillor Bond to move it, a second, Councillor Pearl. I will now put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? Yep, that's passed unanimously. All right, declarations of conflict of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest in a matter being discussed at tonight's meeting? Seeing that there are no conflicts, we'll move right along. So we've now reached public question time and submissions. We will now hear all the public questions and comments on report items from members of the public. All the requests to speak tonight were required to be submitted by 4 p.m. this afternoon. At the time of registering to speak, submitters were given the option to join the WebEx meeting virtually and ask their questions live during the meeting, or to have an officer read their statement on their behalf. Statements submitted by members of the public will be read in summary by an officer. So, quite a list of speakers tonight, councillors. So firstly, can I call upon Jack Bacoa from St Kilda, who is submitting a public question to the council. And Jack, would you be able to state your name and suburb for the record?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Jack Bacoja and my suburb is St Kilda, Spencer Street.
Great. Would you go ahead with your question or statement, sir?
Yes, I will. I'm a very keen resident here where I live. I enjoy my neighbourhood, and I've noticed that there's a lot of development plans for the new St Kilda Pier and for Brooks Jetty. And my question to the council is there any plans to improve the safety and flow of people from the St Kilda foreshore to Ackland Street? Because as a resident here, I see a lot of chaos and a lot of safety issues, and just wondering if the council's already ahead of the game as far as that's concerned.
Great, thank you very much. I will ask the officer, Brian T. or Stefan, to respond. Do we have Brian T or Stephen Mitrick? The joys of technical issues tonight. Bear with us, folks, as we see if we can work this out. We may have to take that question. Oh.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Do you mind if the question is repeated?
Jack, would you be able to repeat your question, please? I think our officer didn't quite catch the question.
Okay.
Sorry, sir.
My question is the council have any plans to improve public safety and access from the St Kilda foreshore along Shakespeare Grove to Ackland Street, as it's very highly populated with pedestrians and bicyclists, and I don't know that I've seen any kind of plan to improve that facility.
Did Brian hear that question?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much. And I thank for the question, which really relates to the redevelopment of St Kilda Pier and the opportunity that provides for council to leverage that commitment to improve pedestrian access and safety from Ackland Street to the beach foreshore. Council has identified the redevelopment of St Kilda as an opportunity to improve safety and access to the foreshore, and we will be looking at some of the opportunities that have been identified in this question. And one of the areas that we are particularly keen to explore is intersection or improvements at Coventry Street and Shakespeare Street at the foreshore to increase pedestrian safety.
Thank you. We'll now move to our second speaker for the evening. I call upon Norbert Oberholzner, who is speaking to item 7.1, the petition, requesting to investigate alternative options to make the Kerferd Road crossover at Herbert Street safer. Norbert, could you introduce yourself and please state your suburb for the record? If you're playing along at home, we are having just a moment while we try to get Norbert online. No, we're not going to be able to. Would perhaps Kirsty Pearce, would you read the statement from Norbert? Sorry, Norbert, at the moment we're having a few technical issues, so we're going to ask our officer to read the statement that you provided for us today.
Certainly, through you, Mayor. The submission reads, my question refers to the recent attempt to a trial closure of the median crossover at Kerferd Road between Montague and Herbert Streets. The Council distributed a letter to residents on the 10th of August 2020 with the subject of trial of safety improvements at this intersection. While I share the concerns of safety at this intersection, I am concerned as to how the Council approached this matter and came to a decision. The Council did not thoroughly consult with residents in the greater area. It was stated in the letter that only 26 community residents petitioned that this trial go ahead. In a more thorough community petition that was initiated, a total of 258 residents have requested for the trial not to proceed. That is 10 times greater than the initial petition, thus going to prove that most rate-paying residents do not want this crossover to be closed. The Council did not consider the inconvenience or loss of amenity to neighbourhood residents that would be caused by removing this access. This crossover has been in place since approximately 1890 and is shown on the MMBW plans of that time. There have been adjustments done to this crossover in the past to make it narrower. The Kerferd Place and Young Street crossover has already been removed. It is a designated crossover between the Albert Park shopping precinct and the shopping strip in Mill Street, therefore providing ease of access to both areas. The impact that this closure would cause is extensive, and the Council did not fully investigate all of the repercussions to local residents. No calculations or surveys seem to have been performed prior to this trial, though in the last few days a car counting device has been installed. What is the reason for this? If the numbers are low, then there would be no reason to change the crossover. If the numbers are high, then this increase in traffic volume would be unacceptable if diverted into smaller local streets. I would like to be involved in any further surveys, as any change will have a great impact for local residents. To access the shopping areas would have to divert out onto busier roads, as in Canterbury Ferrars Road or Richardson Street. Also, residents would be using the Hambleton Street crossover to perform a U-turn to drive back up to Montague Street. Increasing the volume at this point would create more safety issues that are not warranted. Many residents are not wanting for this to happen. Council did not look at alternatives. The most logical would be to leave it as it was originally intended. I believe the best option would be to convert this intersection into a roundabout of a similar scope and detail as at Richardson Street. This would allow for a more controlled dual-lane traffic flow and allow easier pedestrian access. The Council's letter dated 10 August refers to the Shrine to Sea project as an objective by the Victorian State Government, who will be funding it. This can only create more issues for local residents if this boulevard were to be built, and should not take precedence over ratepayer wishes. This does not include what could happen along Queen and Albert roads with their major feeder traffic volumes. The Council should not entertain this vanity beautification project as a reason to change the crossover against the wishes of its ratepayers. I question you on the above facts and to leave the current road as it is. But if there is to be change, a detailed and thorough investigation must be performed.
Thank you, Kirsty. I now call upon Andrew Perkins, who is also speaking to item 7.1, the petition, requesting to investigate the alternative options to make the Kerferd Road crossover at Herbert Street safer. Let's see if this one's possible. So, Andrew, could you please state your name and suburb for the record, please? Andrew, do we have you with us? Well, we might try and get Andrew on in just a moment, because I don't have a statement that we can read. Can I just, Rebecca, should we keep trying our different guests? Yep, okay. So, Andrew, if you are listening, we are going to try and come back to you. This time I'm going to try and call on Cambies Chu, who is speaking to item 7.3, which is the petition requesting Kirrip Park, South Melbourne, to become an off-leash dog park after 5 p.m. on weekdays and any time during the weekend and or public holidays. Cambies,
hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hurrah. Could you
Hurrah.
please state your name for the record and the suburb you live in?
Sure, Cambies Chu, South Bank.
Great. Would you make your statement to the chambers or ask your question?
I'll make a statement if that's okay, thank you.
Sorry.
We'll make statements.
If you speak in a loud voice, that would help us here in the chambers with all our issues. I'm sorry.
Oh, is that better?
That's much better. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We also pay our respects to the traditional owners of this land. The dog park going experience has potential for many positive experiences for dogs. The goal is to condition dogs to accept the activities of everyday life beyond the security of their home. Currently, the dogs that attend Kirrip Park are a group of majority of small oodleish type breeds. They play with each other, hence a regular meetup, which has provided stimulation and socialisation for pets and their parents. The group mainly meet after work hours, including in lockdown, to provide socialisation and familiarisation with doggy behaviour, given the nature of our currently increasing high-density living in this part of Port Phillip Council. The increasing number of high-density dwellings, 2 to 3 are currently being built across the park, and 3 towers will soon be constructed in the Carlin's car yard site, which is across the road. This would necessitate the increase in socialising areas to alleviate human and pet isolation. This, coupled with apartments now being occupied with more single-dwelling families, and Melbourne having the highest dog ownership rates in Australia, it is common that most new developments have limited internal space and car parking. This, combined with the Council's green policy promoting the use of cleaner modes of transportation, it would be difficult for people to transport a pet, for example, by walking or bicycling, to one of the nearest off-leash parks, which is approximately 3.5 to 4 kilometres away. Currently, the park's clean nature is maintained by respectful doggy parents who bring water for their pets and always ensure any refuse is collected and walked over to the nearest bin, which is located across the street from the park. The dogs and dog parents currently interact and share the park quite peacefully with picnickers, fitness enthusiasts, group gym classes, and children who have room to play ball games. All of this acclimates puppies and dog senses to the wider world. For example, during the lockdown, there were some very scared little puppies who did not know the wider world. However, the park familiarized their sense to the world and curbing any further anxiety. Additionally, parents teach their young children a valuable life skill and when asking to pet dogs. Moreover, these are many children who come to the park just to interact with the dogs, as they are the only children and or do not have any pets. In conclusion, we respectfully seek council to allow Kirrip Park to be an off-leash park for the above reasons, and more importantly, while the decision is pending, we kindly request permission to use the park with respect for one and all. This is especially important during the often upcoming isolating Christmas break, which coincides also with the school holidays. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cambies. I now call upon Cooper Allen, who is speaking to item 7.4, which is the petition, requesting us to allow building of a BMX track on Julia Reserve in Port Melbourne. Cooper, would you state your name and suburb, please?
My name's Cooper Allen and I'm from Port Melbourne.
Fantastic. Cooper, I'm just going to ask you, just because if you could speak in a really loud voice today, that would really help us, and please make your statement or ask your question.
Well, I'd like to say that the kids here are all in support of a BMX track being built here, as currently there's not one anywhere in our area. Obviously there's one down at Westgate Park, but most parents wouldn't allow their kids there, as obviously it's not exactly the most safe place. And we'd like this because there's like large community support, everyone around the park wants this to be done, and it's a great thing for the kids once they outgrow the playground nearby, for them to get on their bikes, and have a ride, bit of fun, and it takes up a small amount of space, and it provides a large amount of fun for the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cooper. I now call upon Nash Allen, who is also speaking to item 7.4, the petition for the BMX track. Nash, if you could please state your name and suburb for the record, and then make your statement in a big loud voice. We don't have you, Nash. We'll try and come back to you. So what is it, 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3? I'm going to call now, please, upon Louisa Williams, who is speaking to item 7.5, the petitions for speeding vehicles and excessive traffic noise in Port Phillip. Not for, about speeding vehicles and excessive traffic noise. Louisa, are you with us? And if you are, could you state your name and suburb for the record?
Through you, Mayor, Louisa has been unable to attend and has asked that I read a statement on her behalf.
As an alternative, we're going to ask Kirsty Pearce to please read that statement.
Certainly, through you, Mayor. The statement reads, I am representing many community members from Fisherman's Bend to St Kilda who are concerned with the speeding and noise issues that are worsening over the years. This applies to all vehicles, trucks, cars and motorbikes. To date, we have received around 600 signatures of concerned members via petition to seek support in remedying the issue. There is a Facebook group for the community called Port Melbourne Focus, and there are numerous posts on a regular basis with all concerned about these same issues. Concerns are expressed from all demographics: elderly, families, children, tourists, students, etc. Obviously, summer is more pertinent as the location attracts many from outside of the area. We believe these people to be the major issue, as it was not an issue during lockdown. From the petition submissions, the regular themes coming across are excessive speeds from 100 kilometres to 200 kilometres in the main streets, but also down some of the local streets. Speeding down smaller streets to avoid the main roads, noise with hotted up cars and mufflers, laps up and down the beach, racing through red lights, U-turns at dangerous intersections, and no consideration as they fly down retail strips and through pedestrian crossings. We are hearing of some community members who are actually moving out of the area due to the speed and noise plus an impact to retailers. Some of the local car parks are being used as hoon gathering places. Majority feel that it is a matter of time before a tragedy occurs. Many brace themselves for significant crashes as they hear the hooning noises. There is major frustration that nothing has been done despite so many complaints, either from council or police. Feedback is lack of resources and a suggestion that each party is responsible but no collaboration. I am optimistic that this is changing. In addition, the influx of cars also bring rebel behaviour such as antisocial behaviour, throwing rubbish out of cars, road rage and a reluctance to wear masks. With COVID restrictions easing and dining on the streets, we now have an added safety concern. Recently, a car went into a bus stop on Graham Street and have had various cars plough through fences, so dining on streets is a worry. We are concerned for all students who are building their independence but very trusting. That is, they walk with the green man and don't anticipate cars flying through red lights. All schools would be impacted. Port Melbourne Primary School, Albert Park College students crossing Pickle Street, the new school on Fisherman's Bend, Port Melbourne Specialist School near many main roads, Middle Park Primary on Mill Street and more. I understand that Martin Foley's office is starting to address the issue, but we are really keen to see a police presence, plans to put into action and long-term sustainable remedying of the issues before a tragedy occurs. We would be more than happy to work with relevant parties to discuss solutions which would include EPA monitoring noise, undercover police presence, speed bumps in smaller streets with cameras on main roads and deterring consequences, etc.
Thank you. I now call upon Matt Van Rensburg from Port Melbourne, speaking to item 7.5, which is the petition regarding speeding vehicles and excessive traffic noise in Port Phillip. Matt, do we have you?
Yes, you do, Madam Mayor.
Great. Matt, could you state your name and suburb for the record and then make your statement or ask your question?
Lovely, thank you. Matt Van Rensburg, PM Apartments, Owners Corporation Chairperson, suburb Port Melbourne. Madam Mayor, councillors, council officers, thank you for the opportunity to present. I present this statement in support of the petition submitted by Louisa Williams, item 7.5 on the agenda, as well as my statement being specific to PM apartment residents. The locational area of concern. PM Apartments is located on the block abounding Tarver Street, Prohaski Street and Plummer Streets in Port Melbourne. The roads surrounding us are a throughway to the commercial precinct, being Tycab and the container shipyards. The gates are currently on Prohaski Street, and this area, basically between the commercial area and PM Apartments, is currently a truck stop, so the trucks actually stop there on their way either into the container shipyard or on their way to the Westgate Bridge. Surrounding us are the main thoroughfare roads, Graham Street, Plummer Street, Williamstown Road, Cook Street. All of these roads contribute to the concern specific to PM Apartments, but also as raised by Louisa in her statement in relation to this particular issue. From a background perspective, not sure how many councillors are aware, but PM Apartments is probably one of the first residential developments as part of the Fisherman's Bend redevelopment. There's obviously a significant amount of development that will take place in this area, as you will be aware. Other high-rise apartments or apartments that are being developed, new school being developed local to the area, commercial shopping precinct, Woolworths, Dan Murphy's. This will obviously have an increase in residents and school kids or children. This area will be a major growth in the coming years, and so a transition from a commercial area to a residential area is paramount in terms of managing the safety of this area and this environment and moving it forward. We do understand that this area has typically been a commercial area, but obviously with the rezoning and the change in this area, there is a strong emphasis to move to residential, and hence we believe that some of the things that need to change or our concerns relate to traffic management, truck routings, truck stop, commercial entries into the commercial zones. And the other item that's very important to us is noise pollution. The number of hoons, motorcyclists, souped up vehicles, truck air brakes. There's just a constant hub of noise. There's no specific day or time when this can happen. If the weather's good, they'll be out there. Obviously, the trucks operate all hours of the day and sometimes well into the night. And it seems to be getting worse and worse. There's obviously a concern around safety of residents, kids who obviously have to use the road. In our area, and something we have through our Owners Corporation manager raised with the council, is the lack of street lighting, specifically in Tarver Street, and speeding is a major concern. It just seems that these vehicles seem to take, specifically Plummer Street as an example, straight on to Prohaski, straight onto the Westgate Bridge. But for whatever reason, they stop at the traffic light and sometimes don't even bother stopping at the traffic light. Personal experience, literally last week, a guy jumped the traffic light, basically did a wheel skid, mounted the pavement on the left-hand side and ended up 90 degrees in the road. That's the kind of behaviour we're experiencing in this area.
You've reached the time limit for speaking. So I'm going to have to stop you there. Thank you very much, though, and we have the written statement that you've made as well in front of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I now call upon Alan Wilson from Albert Park, speaking to item 7.5, the petition on speeding vehicles and excessive traffic noise in Port Phillip. Alan, are you with us tonight?
I sure am. I hope you can hear me.
Fantastic. Alan, could you please state your name? I feel like I'm on a radio show. Could you please state your name and suburb for the record and then speak to the petition?
I sure can. My name's Alan Wilson. I live at Beaconsfield Parade on the corner of Beaconsfield and Pickle Street. So most may have turned this corner. Look, I'm just calling as a local sleepless owner and local. Look, we're pretty aware that when we moved into this area that on a Friday and Saturday night it was quite acceptable to have a lot of road noise. And at the moment, just normal traffic where I'm sitting is just quite comfortable. Normal traffic, but since lockdown has finished, we're not just experiencing road noise to the normal hours of, where the cars would take off from our traffic lights and move from here on a Friday and Saturday night from up to around about 9 o'clock, and then it would quieten down. We're now experiencing it like Tuesday night was one of the worst we've had on the long weekend, where it went through to 3 o'clock in the morning. It was just absolutely horrendous. I have one of those wonderful sleep apps with Apple, and those most nights, for about 3 or 4 nights there, we got on average as a family 4.5 hours, and with older children who are studying med at Melbourne, who are all currently sitting their exams. It was a pretty horrendous week. So we're just talking from what we're seeing as an increase. It culminated with 70-odd motorbikes blocking the intersection here while a ute did donuts in the middle of the intersection of Pickle Street and Beaconsfield. Now, I am a motorbike rider myself, but I don't partake in those kind of activities. And the photograph that I've taken of the burnouts done in the middle of the street, where my daughter and her partner, who both study med in Melbourne, who live here, are right in the corner in the study there, and you're literally only 5 metres for where the car lost control. So my question to the council is quite simple. What is the council and Vic Roads going to do about slowing it down? Now, we do expect there's going to be road noise, folks, and we're not naive enough to say that it's going to stop, and we don't have an issue with that, but I think that we need to encourage more people to come to the waterfront, because that's what we're here for. It's what we pay our acquisition of properties. But if you go along the main street here through to Brighton, and I was at my friend's at Esplanade this evening, and he was talking about how there was some police presence only this week down there catching cars speeding up around over the Brighton boxes. Between this area and there, you're talking around about, $50 billion worth of assets of investment on the main street. While we need to encourage people to come more to our foreshores, to support local businesses and this area. We really do encourage it, but I think we just need a little bit more respect from those people coming to our area and our homes, but going to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I've got to thank the local council, by the way. Your reply from the local officers in council back to my inquiry and my concerns was exemplary, and I really thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. But I'm just going to let you guys know I'm literally exhausted. My wife's moved back. We've got a country property in Kilmore.
So, Mr. Wilson, I'm sorry. You just reached the end of your 3 minutes, so if you could wrap it up. Sorry, sir.
That's it, really. Just a question about what council and Vic Roads are going to do about perhaps assisting.
Thank you. One of the councillors may take up your question a bit later in the evening. I do believe we've got Andrew Perkins back with us, so we might try to see if Andrew can speak to the item 7.1, which was the petition requesting to investigate alternative options to make the Kerferd Road Crossover at Herbert Street safer. Andrew, are you with us?
I am.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Andrew, could you please state your name and suburb for the record and then speak to the item?
Andrew Perkins, 33-year ratepayer of Albert Park, resident in Albert Park, 300 metres from the said crossover. Can you just explain to me who am I in front of? Who's present at your end? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, who's present?
My name is Louise Crawford. I'm the mayor. Andrew, I'm just having trouble understanding you. Could you speak up a little bit, just because the sound in this room is very difficult tonight?
It's interesting you say that. When are we going back to face-to-face discussions?
Sorry, I actually can't hear. Well, you could ring the office tomorrow and we could have this discussion. Did you want to speak to the item, though, tonight, so all the councillors can hear?
Is that who's... yeah, that's what I want to do. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah. Now we can hear you better.
Okay. Right, so I'm a 33-year ratepayer. And the crossover at the Herbert Street Montague through the alleged boulevard, it's a very strange thing that a letter from the council arrived, can you hear me, from me on the 20th of August?
Yes.
Can you hear that?
Yep.
Okay, peak pandemic. Now, there's a lot of misrepresentations in your communication, which I don't really want to talk to, but I just want to straighten up the issues about what's going on. So it was proposed to have to close it as a trial. Where are we up to now with our thinking? I can hear you.
No,
can you hear me?
Could you repeat the question? We are having a lot of technical issues. I apologise.
You should try Zoom. It works very well. So, where are you up to?
What's he saying? What did he say? I'm not...
Andrew Perkins.
Madam Mayor, we can hear him.
So we are having a lot of difficulties. So perhaps... I just, with the sound tonight, it is really, really difficult. I really apologise. Can we...
It's not really good enough.
So how about we contact you first thing tomorrow morning to set up a meeting, because it isn't working the sound very well tonight, and I apologise, I'm just not hearing clearly. Would that be okay if we contacted you first thing in the morning to set up a meeting?
Well, I guess it is. I mean, a meeting with who?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Perkins. We'll be in contact. I think it's Mercury retrograde, and that would explain a lot of the issues going on tonight. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with me. Okay. I'd like to call on John Turnbull, who's speaking to item 14.3, the review of submissions for the proposed tenancy agreement at the Port Melbourne Soccer Club.
Yeah, good evening.
John,
can you hear me?
I can. If you could just speak in the biggest voice possible, and could you state your name and suburb for the record?
Sure. So my name's John Turnbull and I live in Armadale. I should also point out, though, that I volunteer upwards of 10 hours a week in Port Melbourne.
Great. If you want to speak to the item then, sir.
Yeah, sure. So first off, congratulations to both new and returning councillors on your election. I'm sure it's been a very, very busy time recently. A lot's happened since I last was able to address council back in July. And so I want to use the opportunity tonight to just go through some of the initiatives and community outreach that the club has engaged in since that July meeting. I think, and hopefully it's happened, that in front of you, each of the councillors will have a printout that I prepared ahead of time, which I would invite you to read through at your leisure after this meeting. What I'll do is I'll talk through very quickly, though, the contents of it for the benefit of those people not in the room. As I mentioned, a lot's happened. Not least, I've now been invited onto the Port Melbourne board as an advisor, and it's in that capacity that I'm addressing you this evening. First off, the club's mini rules programme, which targets or is for kids aged between 4 and 11, is going to be expanding this year. We are launching in 2021 an initiative called Mini Rules Kickoff, which is an introductory programme in a taught and supportive environment for boys and girls. It takes the form of weekly sessions and is focused on introducing kids to the game. The plan is to provide this free of charge for City of Port Phillip residents. For our existing Mini Rules programme, that will continue, and we hope to also expand numbers this year. With Mini Rules Club, it provides opportunities for girls and boys of all abilities, aged between 5 and 11, who want to play small-sided games as well as train. Following community feedback and our own internal review, this season will see us drop the price of our programme, bringing it into line with the price at other clubs in the area, and lowering the barrier to entry for children from lower-income families who want the opportunity to play at our club. I'm particularly delighted that we will also be launching a series of initiatives under the Go Football banner this year. Go Girls is the first of them, which is aimed at 12 to 14-year-old girls, and again, targeting in particular those who are not currently active or playing sport. The emphasis is on social interactions enjoyment rather than performance, results and competition, and I'm delighted that we're the first club in metropolitan Melbourne to run this initiative. More than that, we're the only club in Victoria that's putting this initiative on for free. Our State League Women's programme, community teams, will also be expanding this year, we hope, with a particular focus on the growth of female coaches. The club aims to have equal representation across its community programmes between both males and females, and we'll be making an investment this year to ensure that coaching qualifications can be attained by our female members. We're also launching Walking Football, a partnership with City of Port Phillip, Football Victoria, Active Ageing Australia and One Ball. This is targeting those residents aged 55 and above, or who have limited mobility. We also will be putting this on free for residents of Port Phillip. Further to confusion around our ongoing support for One Ball, we've also taken steps to formalise our agreement through a memorandum of understanding agreed very recently. This will provide a number of benefits to participants in the One Ball programme, not least social membership to Port Melbourne Soccer Club, enabling all participants and their families free entry to all of our senior home games. And finally, the club is partnering with the Ethnic Communities Council of Victoria as a community champion, which will see us engage hopefully in a number of initiatives with them next year as we look to support their mission of empowering people from culturally diverse backgrounds, advocating for human rights, freedom, respect, equality and dignity for ethnic and multicultural communities. I'd hope that this evening I would only be talking to that, but I would like to put one more item before the councillors, if I may. That is namely some news we've had this week of the intention to remove the dividing fence between pitches 2 and 3 at JL Murphy Reserve. Doing this, and I believe the decision was taken 4 years ago, would put us in breach of our NPL licence, and by doing that, put a great threat to the club in our ability to compete in the National Premier Leagues, which is the highest competition level in the state. We've met with council officers Trail and Nankervis today and presented them with an alternative solution to removing the fence, which I hope can be circulated among councillors following this meeting for further consideration. Any questions relating to this, our concerns, or our proposed solution, I would like, if possible, to be directed to Councillors Consolo and Martin, who graciously found time this week to meet with me at Jail Murphy and hear my concern.
We will have to wrap you up on that 3 minutes if you could come to your conclusion.
That was spot on. That is everything I have to say. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We have received a series of public questions to be read out on behalf of the members of the public. So I ask the Coordinator of Governance to read an edited summary of these questions. Over to you, Kirsty.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Mr Adrian Jackson of Middle Park has submitted 6 questions to Council, and I'll read a summary of these questions. Question 1. With predictions of extreme future flooding in low-lying areas of Port Phillip, why is Fisherman's Bend being developed with buildings instead of open space ovals and parkland? Question 2. Who will pay for the parklets and who will keep them clean? What consultation has been undertaken? Who manages parklets when cafes are closed, and are they fire safe? Question 3. Can Council explain what play space and pop-ups are, as mentioned in the Council website, and have your say published on 13 October 2020? Question 4. What is Council going to do with police and government assistance about the illegal drugs, violent assaults and antisocial behaviours in Fitzroy Street? Question 5. Why does Council not ban alcohol on outdoor council areas all year round? And question 6. Can the 50 kilometres an hour speed sign in Petition Street be replaced with a 40 kilometre sign?
Thank you. As Mr Jackson is not in attendance at tonight's meeting, a written response to each of those questions will be published on Council's website and a copy sent to Mr Jackson. So that is the end of all of our speakers, is that right? Yes, we have reached the end. Great. So now we have come to the point of councillor question time. So this is an opportunity for councillors to ask questions of the officers. Councillors, does anyone have a question they would like to ask? Councillor Pearl.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. My question is in relation to the maintenance of the nature strip or grass strip on Beaconsfield Parade. I think from memory we used to do that work on behalf of Vic Roads and then perhaps pared the service down. There's probably slightly grass now, dry grass probably more than a foot high now towards the St Kilda end of the median strip, which is creating a bit of a fire hazard. So I just want to get an update from officers on what our maintenance obligations are of the median strip if we're doing them or Vic Roads is doing them, and to see when the situation will be remedied. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Through Madam Mayor, I know that Mr T has been involved in negotiating with Vic Roads, but it might be Mr Carroll might be able to help as well. I'll just see which officer sticks their hand up.
So Mr Carroll or Mr T, or Brian T or Chris Carroll, would either of you like to take that question?
Through you, Mayor, it's Chris Carroll here. I will need to take that on notice and I'll come back to councillors on that response.
Thank you, Mr Carroll. Councillors, are there any other questions? No. Well, we'll move on to the sealing schedule, and we have no items for sealing in tonight's agenda. So now we actually reach the point of the petitions and joint letters. We unusually have 5 petitions on tonight's agenda, but there has been a caretaker period. So firstly, it's 7.1, which is the petition that we've heard some speakers about, requesting to investigate alternative options to make the Kerferd Road Crossover at Herbert Street safer. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers on this report? So, councillors, being no questions, we have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this or something different? Councillor Copsey to move. Councillor Bond to second. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to the recommendation? Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. This is sort of a part 2 to a petition we received in August last year. Last year we had a group of residents from the street immediately adjacent to the intersection in question, come to us and request we take action, council takes action to address the safety concerns and the high accident rate in that particular area. And that was we received that petition, we responded to that petition, and council agreed to a course of action, which was going to be a trial, which we believe would try and address the high accident rate at that particular intersection. Subsequent to that, another group of residents from surrounding streets, I'm not sure if there are any from the immediate area, but from streets 1 or 2 away, who are going to be inconvenienced by the closure of this particular street, have given us a petition to say that they don't want to see a closure here. So we're in this situation where, you know, the group of residents that live closest to this intersection want to see us do something about the high accident rate, and those that live in surrounding streets don't wish to see anything done with this intersection. So that's a brief summary for those watching at home about what this petition is about. Officers will come back to us with a response and a recommendation and a suggested course of action for us to pursue here. So good luck to our officers in resolving this.
Thank you. Would the councillor like to speak to the motion? There being no one else to speak, I will now put the motion. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. The next petition that we will look at is 7.2, which is the request for the removal of rubbish bin and the installation of 2 recycling bins at either end of the shopping strip on Tennyson Street in Elwood. Now, councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to this report? Councillor Sirikoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just concerned that if you remove the rubbish bins and just replace them with recycle bins, that people will end up using the recycle bin as a rubbish bin, and then you'll end up contaminating the recycle bin. So is it possible to have both rubbish bin and recycle bins in that location?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we'll address that question when we bring a report back to respond to the petition.
Yep, thank you for raising that, Councillor Sirikoff. Are there any other questions in regards to this petition? No. So, councillors, do I have a mover for this petition? Councillor Copsey to move, Councillor Baxter to second. Don't be shy, everybody. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Baxter? No. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Would you like to close at all, Councillor Copsey? Just checking, because I forgot that one before. All right, I will now put that motion. All those in favour? That's passed or carried unanimously. We're moving to the third petition, which is 7.3. If I just turn. The petition that's requesting Kirrip Park in South Melbourne become an off-leash dog park after 5 p.m. on weekdays and any time during the weekend and or public holidays. So I know dogs are of great interest to our community. Are there any questions on this report? Councillor Pearl.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to Mr. Trail, if possible. I was just wondering, and happy to take this on notice if needed, but was this sort of proposal considered during the design process of the park? And if it was considered, what were the results of that inquiry?
Do we have Anthony on Trail on the line?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Anthony Trail here.
Anthony, great. Would you be able to address Councillor Pearl's question, please?
Thank you. Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, we did undertake community consultation, but it was more for future planning, noting most of our community had not established in Kirrip. So there was some future planning, but no direct conversation regarding that being a dog park. But we have designed the space where we can retrofit elements based around community need into the future.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Sirikoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With respect to Kirrip Park, I'll start again. Is there a general policy for dogs off leash for all parks across the municipalities? So it's the same conditions can apply?
I believe Lily Rosick is going to answer that question.
Through you, Mayor. Council has current order number 3, which designates areas and restrictions currently gazetted as dog off-leash areas. And if Council wishes to make an order by resolution, they can do so to alter the amount of dog off-leash areas that we have within our municipality pursuant to the Domestic Animal Management Act. And in addition, Council has a domestic animal management plan which is renewed every 4 years, which also reviews dog off-leash opportunities. And in addition, we have just completed consultation on our public space strategy, and use of our public space for dog off-leash opportunities has also been explored.
Lily, would I be able to ask a further question to that? Was Kirrip Park ever in the DAMP identified as a possible off-leash dog park? I can't quite remember.
Through you, Mayor, I'll refer the question to Lisa Davis to answer what was identified in the Domestic Animal Management Plan and if Kirrip Park was identified.
Through you, Mayor. Kirrip Park wasn't specifically identified in the Domestic Animal Management Plan, which was drafted back in 2017, at which time the development of Kirrip Park was just kicking off. However, an action to look at all of the dog off-leash areas within Fisherman's Bend was noted in the Domestic Animal Management Plan, and this petition would form part of that action, which we're scheduled to do in 2021.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, councillors? If not, can I have a mover, please, for this petition? Councillor Pearl. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Baxter. Councillor Pearl, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the petitioners that have put this forward to us this evening. Just to note that we're noting the petition, and a report will come back to Council in 2021. This Council understands how important our growing domestic animal population is, and it was always envisaged that this park would be regularly reviewed as the community in Montague precinct develops and as time goes by. So this is all part of that process, and the officers will do a due process and opine on whether or not they think it's suitable. And back in 2021, we'll see this report come to Council, and the community will be able to see firsthand what the officers' view is and what this Council thinks about it. But thanks very much for the petitioners. We appreciate it, and looking forward to the report coming forward in 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter, you don't want to speak. Any other councillors like to speak to this? No? If not, I will put it to the vote. All those in favour? That carried unanimously. The fourth petition of the night is 7.4, and it's the request to allow the building of a BMX track on Julia Reserve in Port Melbourne. Do we have any questions for the officers, councillors? Councillor Pearl.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering if the officers could give some background in terms of previously when installations at the park have been removed, what has caused that action to happen? Is council responding to a complaint, or has council been found or made aware of the construction in the park and therefore had to remove it? I was just interested to get some background in terms of some of the history here.
So would Lisa Davis or Anthony Trail like to take that question?
Through you, Mayor. Lisa Davis.
Yes, great.
In response to the question, the answer is in both cases there were complaints, but there were also observations made of officers, particularly of the vandalism to the trees, which attracted a complaint and officers to attend the site. In terms of what the process was, we assessed the equipment that had been installed in the park. We taped off some of those installations. There was a seesaw, a tree swing, and some other play equipment homemade, which was also vandalised and sort of distributed around the park there were loose nails and things, so it was assessed as unsafe. Our process was to tape off the material, put a sign on it, asking for the owners to come forward, and we gave a time period for that to occur, whilst also clearing away the dangerous aspects. We weren't contacted in that case. We held the material off-site, and we also door knocked the area to see if we could establish the ownership without success.
Thank you. You had a question? Go for it.
Through you, Mayor. Can we have an indication of the process and the time frame that it would take to get something like this if it was successful in the budget process?
Would you take that on as well, Lisa Davies, or is that a question for a different officer?
That's a question for Mr. Trail.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Anthony Trail here. The budget process, Bill, generally starts from January, and the budget adoption would be in June 2021 for the next financial year. Alternatively, this could be considered as part of budget review processes through our budget and finance teams within the organisation.
Would you like a follow-up question,
Yeah,
Councillor Consolo?
Yep. To you, Mayor. As a follow-up, after that, if it did get approved, is it through the design process? I just want the petition writer to understand what to expect.
Anthony Trail, would you be able to respond to that? Like, how long would the whole process of, if it were to be approved, how long it's likely to, or vaguely would take? Are we talking 1 month, 6 months?
Through you, Madam Mayor, if a budget was provided for a project such as this, we would be able to work directly with the petitioners on this. The first bit of work we would have to do is try and identify a site and do consultation around that. Infrastructure like this does have support, but also does have community members that may not like it within that area. So we do a site analysis on a spot that we think is most suitable for this type of need. We do acknowledge, as we have in the petition, the health benefits and the objectives of what's been trying to achieve with the BMX track, so we would be supportive of that as a concept, but there would be a bit of work, potentially up to 6 months, to find a site, do the consultation before the build would happen. In regards to the build, it is a mounded track, so that could be done relatively quickly once a site was resolved.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on this item? Councillor, I'm having a mental blank, sorry. Councillor Clark, bear with me, apologies.
That's okay, through you, Madam Mayor. Has this site been chosen to be a BMX track? And is this, how does that get assessed for the location of where to put a BMX track in across the municipality?
Could you respond as well to that one, Anthony?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to understand the question, is it, what would be the process to decide a site? Was that?
Yes. Sorry, has this area been chosen to be a BMX track, or do you need to make an assessment for its suitability to be a BMX track?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, our preference would be to locate a BMX track at another site. The current site is in the middle of a residential area, and we think there's other sites nearby that would be more suitable for an asset such as this.
And through you, Mayor, the current site would not be allowed under local laws currently, but if council wished to, they could amend the local law, but their current site would not be allowed under local law.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Are there any other questions? Could I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Martin. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Consolo. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to the item?
Can I commend the petitioners for putting forward this petition? I note they must have gone to a very good primary school a few years ago. There's a desperate need, I believe, for a BMX track in the area. You only have to go down to Westgate Park to see many, many young people there in the evenings using the not necessarily legal BMX track that they've set up. I don't know whether the location that's being proposed here is the ideal location, but I think if we pass this motion, at least we can investigate and perhaps we can identify either this location or another location for a BMX track.
Thank you. Councillor Consolo, would you like to speak to the item?
Yes. Thank you, Cooper, for submitting the petition on behalf of Julia Reserve and Garden City in Port Melbourne, all of the youth of the area. It was a pleasure to meet with you, and I support the introduction of a BMX track and look forward to putting this idea through the upcoming budget process. I acknowledge the struggle of lockdown and understand the desire to create this outdoor experience for you all. So, thank you.
Would any other councillors like to speak to the item? Councillor Martin, would you like to close? Then I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. The final petition for tonight is 7.5, speeding vehicles and excessive traffic noise in Port Phillip. Are there any questions, councillors? Councillor Pearl.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering if officers would be able to provide details of known operations by the EPA on noise pollution, particularly in the Port Melbourne area.
So, Brian T. Lily Rosick might be the person to speak.
Through you, Mayor, I will actually invite Council's Chief Traffic Engineer, Mr Mitrick, to provide a response.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm afraid that we will have to take the question on notice and provide a response later.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions on this item? I would then ask for a mover, Councillor Copsey, and a seconder, Councillor Consolo. So, Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to the item?
Thanks very much to the petitioners for bringing this to the attention of councillors. I think it's already been brought to the attention of councillors from the shared experience of living in the area. It's an ongoing issue which requires really pretty constant monitoring. It is mainly a traffic and EPA matter. However, council can certainly advocate on behalf of residents, and I note that we're just receiving the petition tonight and that we'll have an officer response at the next available council meeting, but be assured that it's a matter that councillors are aware of and would like to see a resolution to too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Consolo doesn't want to speak to it. Does anyone else want to speak to the item? Councillor Pearl.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Last Tuesday night was something out of the history books for this problem. I live one street back from Beaconsfield Parade, and it was all night long until the wee hours of the morning. And it seemed, I don't know what was in the water that day, but something certainly happened across the city on the streets that night. And even last night, it was at an elevated level. So this appears to be a problem. Maybe the lack of international travel has meant people are travelling more to our Bayside region and continuing just to do circles all night. But it's a huge problem for our local amenity, and it also detracts on a lot of people coming to share in our vibrant local economy, and particularly at a time when traders need revenue the most. Outdoor dining facilities across South Melbourne and on Bay Street and Port Melbourne, the last thing you want is smoking tyres and a number of motorbikes going past you whilst you're enjoying whatever beverage or food you're consuming in one of those streets. So it's an issue council can do a lot about, and I'll say more about that in just a minute. What this does also indicate is the rubber is now hitting the road in Fisherman's Bend. I would say most of the traffic concerns that are being expressed rightly by the people in the PM building have been around for a long period of time. It's just people haven't been within proximity to it. You only have to drive through Fisherman's Bend over the past few years and see the amount of tyre work that's on the ground to realise that on the average Saturday night there's a fair bit of action going there with cars that are much more souped up than my Volkswagen Golf would be able to perform. So this is something we don't consider all that well in the planning process, and we need to be a bit more considerate of it when we're putting our input into the state government around planning matters in Fisherman's Bend in particular. But the reason council is the key to solving this problem is our ability to apply pressure on subordinate authorities within the state government, particularly the EPA, to get them out there and do what is essentially their job. And I'd be interested to see how many operations they've actually been able to successfully complete in this area in the past 12 months and what the results of that were. If they're looking to raise revenue, then there's a pretty easy going pretty much every Saturday night. Any time it's above 25 degrees, it's pretty easy pickings in our area. But basic enforcement is one part of the problem. Traffic management is another, but council plays a key role in managing the relationship between our residents and the people that expect us to fix this problem and the state government. And it's something we do take seriously, but perhaps we need to apply a bit more planning and a bit more resources around. So happy to accept the petition. It's a complex issue. Everybody wants to solve it, and we will work over the next 12 months in particular to see if we can improve this problem with our good relationship with the state government. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Bond.
A few years ago when I was running for a position for state government, one of the policies I put out was to deal with noise in areas like Bay Street and Beaconsfield Parade. And what it involved was a couple of gantries on Beaconsfield Parade that contained the noise equivalent of speed cameras. So if someone or a vehicle, any sort of vehicle, went under the gantry at a particular volume, it would trigger the camera exactly like someone speeding under the gantry would in some of the existing speed camera locations we have all across the city, which we're all familiar with, some of us more than others. And still have that information at home somewhere, and it was fully costed. I think it was about $2.3 million for 3 gantries along Beaconsfield Parade there. I will go home and try and dig that out and see if we can at least have the information and see what it would, if it was still available, and what it would cost, and perhaps we could provide that to the state government in our letter to them, requesting support in this area and action from them to deal with this. But certainly the technology is out there to deal with this. It currently exists and it's in operation in Singapore. Any car that's over a certain volume in Singapore certainly gets fined and taken off the road. And they have these measuring devices at the entrances to tunnels, under bridges, exactly as we have speed cameras. So who knows, this may be a great revenue raising opportunity for the state government. We could certainly pay off our debt last Tuesday night, the way things happen. So I'll go home and see what I can find through my old folders and bring that back if I can find them.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Would anyone else like to speak to the item? I will back to Councillor Copsey. Did you want to close? I will now put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. That is the last of the petitions. So, councillors, we're now moving on to item 8, which is presentation of reports. So the first report that we will be dealing with is the, I'm just getting it up to, is the presentation of the City of Port Phillip annual report for 2019-2020. Councillors, are there any questions of the officers? Councillor Pearl.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. This is without notice also, because I only just found this about 10 minutes ago. I missed it when I read it last night. Page 253, if you could reference that. I'm talking about, Mr. Carroll would know, and I'm always obsessed with the underlying result. It says the underlying result in 2019-2020 is negative 2.9 million. And below it, it says the council's underlying operating result in 2020 is a deficit of 6.5 million. Just wondering if we can get a bit of clarification in terms of if there's a difference between the underlying result and the underlying operating result.
Chris Carroll.
Sorry, councillors. I'll just check and see if either Mr. Lew or Mr. O'Keefe are here. Otherwise, I'll take it on notice. I'll take it on notice.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Are there any other questions on the annual report? Okay, well then, could I have a mover for the officer's recommendation or for something else? Councillor Pearl to move, Councillor Copsey to second. Councillor Pearl, would you like to speak to the item? No, Councillor Copsey? Councillor Copsey.
I will say it's an historic document, looking at our operations over what has been a tumultuous year that we're still riding the waves of. So I just want to note that the annual report is a fascinating read, contains a wealth of information about Council's activities and operations over the year. The City of Port Phillip, I would like to acknowledge the staff's fantastic effort in putting together such a comprehensive and readable document. It's been awarded in the past, and I think that it's a really excellent document for anyone who wants to get an overview of what's been occurring in our city. Thank you very much to the staff for all the hard work that goes into producing it. And that is all.
Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? I will speak to it. You know, looking back through it all, you forget half the things that happen in a year. And it does tend to blur a little. But there were some really great things. I know, you know, some outcomes where there were some amazing playgrounds that got built. There were, you know, sports fields regenerated. There was a whole lot of things various activities took place in our city prior, obviously, to the last 6 months. But you forget, I think, often how much council does across the board, and you might not even notice because it doesn't affect your day-to-day life, but there is a lot happening at any one point in time in the council. So the other great thing about the annual report is we try to be as transparent as possible on this council and put everything out there for you, the community, to see. So I want to thank the officers for doing it. If you're looking for some light reading any day now, it's worth a look through just to see the extent of what happens in the city around you, because it is quite incredible. Councillor Pearl does not want to close. Okay, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. The next report, sorry, as I turn the page, is 14.2, which is the proposed discontinuance of part of the road part R2975 between 17 Coventry Place and 378 Coventry Street, South Melbourne. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? All right, well, then I would like a mover for the recommendation or something different. Councillor Pearl. Do I have a seconder? I'll second it. Councillor Pearl, would you like to speak to this motion?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. These are decisions we infrequently make, probably 5 or 6 times a year just for the new councillors. Every time we sell one of these, it's a form of a reduction in public space. We do receive some revenue from it, albeit it's probably less in some respects of what you would say the developable commercial value of that per square foot, per square metre would be. But the reality is, with most of these laneways, there's probably a more effective use than some of them, which is why in this occasion I'm happy to support it. And in the past, councillors would know where I think there's more value than what's being realised, I would be happy to vote against it. But in this case, I don't see this as a particularly controversial one, and I'm happy to support it here today. Just to give a bit of background to the new councillors, it's not something we do, with monthly regularity, but it's something that comes up probably 5 or 6 times a year. And in this case, I don't think it's particularly controversial.
I won't speak to the motion. Councillor Baxter.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just to agree with Councillor Pearl that obviously there are times in which, after reviewing all of the information given us to by the officers, we would still decide that we would want to keep this public space for whatever reason. But the officers are doing their best to inform us of perhaps an opportunity here to make better use of the space. So having looked at this one, doesn't look like we can do much with it.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pearl, would you like to close?
No, thanks, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I will put that motion. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. The next report we will consider is 14.3, and that is to review submissions for proposed tenancy agreement with the Port Melbourne Soccer Club. Councillors, are there any questions of officers? All right, Councillor Bond.
In the submission from the Port Melbourne Soccer Club earlier tonight, they expressed concern that yesterday they were informed that a fence between, I think it was pitches 1, 2 and 3 was going to be removed shortly, and that would put them in breach of their, I think VPL, he said, which I presume is Victorian Premier League licence. Can officers outline what it is they intend to do with the fence? Do they in fact intend to remove that fence? And if so, do they agree it's likely to put the club in breach of its Victorian Premier League licence?
Is that a question for Anthony Trail?
Through you, Mayor, I'll start the response and then Anthony Trail can add to it.
Thanks, Mr. Carroll.
There's been a long history of negotiations on leases with the Port Melbourne Soccer Club, starting about 4 years ago. Previous council, which Councillor Bond was a part of, was very explicit that it wanted to remove the fencing around Field 2. It still agreed that the club could continue with Field 1 being for its National Premier League purposes. Unfortunately, and in the lease that was agreed and in the public report that went up, all these things were noted, including the need for things like the club to contribute the above standard maintenance costs on the field as well for that very high standard of keeping that field up to National Premier League standard. Unfortunately, in implementation of the lease, some of those things that the council and that the club agreed were not implemented at the time. More recently, we briefed councillors and there was great discussion into that briefing and to the report that was brought into council in June regarding the fencing, and there had been some improvements made in terms of some holes and gates were opened up to Field 2, but it was pretty clear it didn't meet the intent of what was previously agreed, nor did it meet the expectations of the council at the time, and we were asked to further investigate removing the fencing. I'll now hand over to Mr. Trail to outline his plans and his discussions with the club.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just to add, the requirement of the Premier League is regarding perimeter fencing just requires their prime pitch where they play their Premier League matches is fully fenced off. So that is still achievable through design and working with the club around a pitch one solution. What's been discussed and intended to deliver is the fence that is between pitch 2 and 3 and the access from the other way, making that consistent with every other licensed ground and have that public access when the sports games and training is not currently participating.
And if I may add to that, Mayor, during the budget development process, it was made known to councillors that in removing that fencing around Field 2, it would create a gap with Field 1. An option was given to councillors to fund putting in a perimeter fencing. The councillors declined to put that in, so at the moment that cost of sealing off the Field 1 after we take down the other perimeter fencing will be at the expense of the club.
I believe there's a follow-up question from Councillor Bond.
So specifically on the issue of whether removing that fence will put them in breach of their VPL licence, are we saying that if we do remove that and there isn't a fence between pitch 1 and pitch 2, that will put them in breach, and someone, whether it's us or the club or whoever, we can worry about that at another stage, will have to build a fence between pitches 1 and 2 so that it does comply with their VPL licence?
Through you, Mayor, that is my understanding, and these things were discussed with councillors in forming the budget.
Can I go? Did you want
one
more
another question? If I was to move an amendment to this tonight in order to give the fence a stay of execution until we can resolve what happens with a permanent fencing or temporary fencing between pitches 1 and 2, so that we're not removing this fence and then having to put it back up again because we've realised it is in breach of their licence and they won't be able to play games there. And when this lease comes back to us for final sign-off, we have resolution on what happens to fences between pitch 1 and 2 and between pitches 2 and 3.
So I'll ask the question, 2 secs. So do we need to amend this, or is it just a submissions at the moment? I'll take some further questions. So it was Councillor Pearl next, and then it will be Councillor Clark after that. So Councillor Pearl.
I'm just wondering if we got, in the previous resolution last year, we asked to get statistics on the use of the field and the purpose of the use of the fields. I'm just wondering if we can get a number on how many days Field 1 was used in the past 12 months, if that data has been provided yet.
Is that Anthony or Chris? Do we have that data?
Through you, Madam Mayor. We don't have the usage in data, but the Port Melbourne Soccer Club use approximately 25 hours a week on pitch 1 and 2, and 4 hours a week on pitch 3 is their essentially programming and usage allocation for those grounds.
And sorry, Madam Mayor, a follow-up. How many days a year or hours a year would the fencing be required in terms of match days? Do we have that data yet?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the requirement would be for their match day fixtures of the National Premier League team. That would be 12 to 15 fixtures throughout a year.
Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just seeking to clarify with council officers that the fence was removed to further improve access for the residents as part of previous feedback and requests to enhance accessibility for residents when the soccer club wasn't using it.
Mr. Trail.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct. The grounds are on a licence and should be used by the community outside of soccer operations. We do have gates that allows that, but as per Mr. Carroll informed you before, the intent's always been to remove that entire length of fence to make that more consistent with our other sites.
Thank you. So we have resolved it. I might ask a question if I may. I can't quite remember which field is used for their main soccer, the professional one. Is that 1 or 3?
It's field 1, Mayor.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's where they're. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Are there any other questions, Councillor Copsey?
Oh, firing on all cylinders. If officers could just, it's probably a process question. My understanding, of course, being that tonight is just the receipt and hearing of submissions. So I'm wondering whether it's necessary to have any process amendment tonight, or if that can be dealt with prior to the council's formal decision on the lease, which is still forthcoming.
Who's going to answer the question, CEO?
Through you, Mayor. It's Chris Carroll here. Look, the report on where to go to next with the soccer club is coming up in a couple of weeks. So I'm happy for to defer any implementation of further removal of fencing without a resolution at this stage, because it's just a natural that the team can continue to consider the feedback from the club and can fully inform the council about the implications. Although I do note that this has been going on for about 4 years, and I've been getting significant pressure from councillors over that 4-year period to enact this decision.
So can I just clarify, Mr. Carroll? So you're suggesting that there's no need for an amendment, that there would be no removal of the fence until we actually had fully considered the full lease? Or do we need an amendment that Councillor Bond might propose?
Well, I believe this is a review of submissions for proposed tenancy agreement. It's only tonight was about reviewing the submissions. There's a final decision on the lease in a couple of weeks' time. As I said, if I'm not sure procedurally, you have to get advice from governance about what the process is to put in further actions or resolutions for officers. But what I have said is that I'm happy to defer implementation for another couple of weeks.
Peter Smith would like to add to the conversation.
Through you, Mayor, if Council was to accept that as an undertaking, it could be recorded in the minutes as an undertaking. If Councillor Bond wished to move an amendment to ensure that happened, that would be up to Councillor Bond.
Sorry, just to speak, it's not really a question, but as part of the motion, I was going to include that the officers come back to us with the cost of installing a fence between pitch 1 and 2. So that once we know the cost, we can then have the discussion about who pays for it, whether it's us, the club, or whoever. But that was going to be part of the resolution, is that we give the fence a stay of execution, but also get the cost of the what may be required in order to achieve the unfencing of fence 2 and the refencing of pitch 1, so that the club is not in breach of its NPL or VPL licence as per the submission we received tonight.
It would be good.
Through you, Mayor, we would be able to give you the cost that was given to the council in the previous budget as a guide. Whether that would need to be updated once we go to tender would be another matter, but that would give you a guide. And we'd be happy to undertake that without needing an amendment to include it, I would think, unless Mr. Carroll tells me otherwise. Chris, are you able to advise further?
Yeah, no, through you, Mayor. Yes, that's right. We did do some work and provided an option for councillors as part of the budget process, which wasn't taken up, but we can redistribute that and update it as well for the final.
That would be good, Mr. Carroll, given that a lot of it's a new council, so it probably would be better for us to refresh the returning councillors' memories and for the new councillors get them up to speed. That would be great. So the undertaking is to both give us the costings and to hold a stay of removal of the fence. And I think Councillor Pearl had the next question.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. We asked this last term when this item came to us. I'm just wondering if the officers now have an accurate calculation of the total amount of subsidy effectively that's provided to the club on an annual basis in terms of maintenance of the buildings, maintenance of the grounds, and rent subsidies, etc.
Anthony Trail or Joe McNeil?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Anthony Trail, happy to do this. I've been working with property. I'll go through a list of sort of tying up that subsidy. The rent pavilion is approximately $13,000. Rent on grounds, applying essentially a 20% use based around the non-full market value of the 3 grounds, based around the usage would be $18,000. Maintenance of the building as an average per annum is $18,000. Maintenance of the ground, assuming that the majority of the cost goes to pitch 1 and 2 and a contribution of pitch 3 would be $80,000, totalling approximately about $130,000 per annum as a subsidy cost.
Councillor Martin has a question.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Can I ask a costing question? And my background is that I'm involved in sport at Murphy Reserve, and a great frustration to me and in my previous role as a school principal has been the inability to access Soccer Field 2, and the current gate is almost useless, so it's a very deterring fence there at the moment. And the more opportunity we can get the public to use Oval 2, the better. However, Councillor Consola and I have also discussed this issue with the directors of the soccer club. They have a proposal which we could even ask them to cost, but someone I think needs to cost, rather than remove the fence and commit someone to the expense of putting in a new fence alongside Oval 1, if we could install sliding gates that are at least 8 to 10 metres in length. The fence that we're talking about is about 60 metres long. If we could open up 2 8 to 10 metre gaps that are sort of midway either side of the centre, that would make Oval 2 far more accessible to people like local footballers who lose their footballs when the ball goes over the fence.
Question for the officers, Peter?
So the question is, are we able to get a costing for adding those 2 gates and compare that with the costing of removing the fence and building a new fence next to Oval 1?
I'll go to the CEO, Peter Smith.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think we'd have to take that one on notice and include it if we could, just given that the next report's coming back at the next meeting. There may not be time to get costing, but given we're happy to look at the proposal and see if we can include some advice on that in the next report.
So are there any more questions? Would someone like to move the motion or something different? Councillor Bond, someone to second it. Councillor Copsey. Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to the item?
Yeah, I won't move the amendment. I was going to move because we have the undertaking from the officers. I think we all agree that there needs to be greater public access to these fields, but we don't want to do so at the expense of one of the great clubs that exists in Port Phillip, in the Port Melbourne Soccer Club. So it's only like 2 weeks till this report comes back to us. We'll have more information then, and we'll be able to make a better and informed decision. And hopefully by then we're able to resolve the potential issues that will impact the VPL or NPL licence that this club holds, and also resolve the public access to these areas. So only another 2 weeks for everyone to wait until we get those answers.
Councillor Copsey. Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Pearl.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor, and still no apologies for calling this one in. Keep in mind this was to be done under delegation by officers if councillors in the last council didn't call the item in. It's 20% of Murphy's reserve area mass, and it's of critical importance, and already the work that's gone into this by councillors and the oversight of the public and the work for the officers is already getting better results, and I think in the long run the club will be a much better place for players, and the fields will be much better access for recreation 10, 20 years from now because of all the hard work that's going into this here. There are some in the community that and it's been expressed to me vehemently, I would say, that council is not a supporter of the club, which I completely disagree with. I think we're the largest sponsor of the club. We're investing a huge amount of money in the club. I'd like to see our logo on their website, and I'd like to see our logo as a sponsor on the side of their field to be much more prominent, because I suspect we are one of the largest sponsors of the football club. We put our money where our mouth is, and it's in everyone's best interest that we work in harmony to get good quality outcomes, but very much looking forward to the report that's going to come to us finally in a few weeks' time after many months of consideration on this very important piece of land. 20% of Murphy's Reserve, 20% of very precious open space that is owned by the community. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? There being no one, Councillor Bond, would you want to close at all? We're just going to pause for a moment. Okay, we can take this to the vote. We need like elevator music in the pauses tonight. There's been a lot of them. All right, I'm going to put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Great, that's carried unanimously. Councillors, we are at report 14.4, which is the outcomes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting, which was held on the 8th of September 2020. Do we have any questions for the officers?
Happy to
Councillor
move.
Pearl.
I'm happy to move if you want.
You're happy to move it? Anyone, just before Councillor Pearl moves it, were there any other questions? Or any questions? All right, Councillor Pearl to move it. Councillor Bond to second. Councillor Pearl.
This is a critically important report for the surety of council and the operation of council. A great, tremendous message of courtesy needs to go out to Councillor Gross and Councillor Voss, who sat on this committee, I think, for the full four years of the previous council. It's a bit of a thankless task, and it is another line 2, line 3 protection we have around a number of key risks in the business that we preside over. So there's not much to say about this individual report because they're a bit scant on nature, but it does give you enough information to provide what their area of focus has been. And I support their work, and hopefully the next two councillors that go onto this committee will be as studious as the last two.
Councillor Bond. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? I will briefly say that I am one of those councillors that will be filling some big shoes, so I am looking to the role for the oversight, and I'm looking forward to finding out the councillor that will be joining me in the hard work, thankless task, but worthwhile. Councillor Pearl, would you like to close?
No, thanks, ma'am.
I will put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? You went very early. That is carried unanimously. Councillors, we have reached item 15, which is notices of motion. We have no notices of motion tonight, so we'll move on to reports by councillor delegates. And given that none of us have been delegated to committees yet, that will come next. So we'll keep moving through. Item 17 is urgent business. Councillors, do we have any items of urgent business? There being none, we'll move on to confidential matters. Councillors, there are no confidential matters for us to consider tonight. So there being no further business, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you, and thank you to everyone at home for staying with us through the technical glitches.